Mary, you want to lead us in the pledge?
Yes.
See, look at
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Take the roll, please.
Mayor.
Here.
Brooks.
Here.
Summers. Here. Singer. Moran. Rice. Harris.
Here.
Rainier. Benefield.
Here.
Fritz. Gould.
Here.
Militello. Here. Ballard.
Here.
Frizalone.
Yes. Here.
Winfrey. Here. Parker. Here. Staley Berry. Here. Dollinger.
Yes.
Markham.
Here.
Hart. Yes. Tumanello.
Here.
Weigel.
Here.
Berry.
Here.
Prolitis.
Here.
And Eustace. We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you everyone for taking some extra time today to go through a very important project. For many of you, this project may be something you've worked on for the last couple of years. I've been working on this for the last 20. So it's nice to see the project coming along. This meeting really is to bring everyone up to speed where we're at. You know, we asked our team to put together a project based on $195 million. What that means, what that meant was, show us what we can get for $195 million. And that's why there's certain aspects of the project are not included, because that would have taken us over the $195 million. The biggest portion of that, you're going to hear about some very small items, perhaps, today. You're going to hear about the whole project. But the elimination of not building out the entire building is probably the one decision we're going to have to make, whether we're going to build out the entire building. I think you'll get a little bit today of why we might want to strongly consider that. I would say we should strongly consider just to make the building more functional and take care of all the judges we need to take care of, so we're fully built out from an operational standpoint. Because we're not, the operations are much more expensive to try to accommodate the number of judges, or we aren't able to get the judges, additional judges assigned to us, because we have no place to put them. So there's that part of it, and I think, I don't know, is the chief judge with us? There he is. And I think the chief judge can explain the ramifications of perhaps not doing a full build out, just so you can get that information. But there's other things that we're taking out. Some will cause us higher operational expenses, some for our aesthetic. We all want something to look nice. So I'm going to hand it over to Jason from White and Tom from Gilbane. They'll talk about some of the ramifications of excluding certain aspects of the project, which I might add, in the original design, they advised us to include much of this, including the build out of the entire building and not shelling out 2 floors. So at this point, I was going to hand over to Jason, and we can have a question and answer portion when Jason and Tom are done with their presentation.
Good morning. Thanks, everyone. I'm Jason Dwyer with White & Company. If I didn't put you to sleep, I turned all the lights off there. So as Jim said, I'm going to kind of walk you through the overall design for the courts project and then talk about a couple other specific recommendations we have. Before I get into the... Looks like I just lost my presentation. Yeah, I won't do that.
like that screensaver.
So I think the IT group's just been giving me challenges this morning to see how I can react. First, your computer wasn't working, so I had to plug mine in. But anyway, so before I get into the presentation, Tom Leonard and Alan Brooks are here from Gilbane, and Mike Wolf from Farnsworth as well. Really, our three companies have been working closely with the county and all the users to kind of pull all this together. So I wanted to introduce them. So let me just kind of walk you through. I think a lot of board members have seen parts and pieces of this. Certainly there's a couple new faces on the board since we started this many years ago. Capital Improvements Committee members have probably seen more and more of the detail, but I just want to kind of give you a quick overview of the whole project, and then we'll get into some specific recommendations. So first, I think everybody knows the location. The county acquired the First Midwest Bank site several years ago now, and so that's the site for the new Justice Center directly west of the current courthouse, the block highlighted there. And the project is intended to consume the entire block. I'm going to kind of run through just floor by floor to give you a feel for what's in there, kind of the major overriding parameters. The project, as it's planned right now, is going to have 28 courtrooms in the initial build-out, and we'll talk a little bit more about this option of shelf floors. But the building has the potential to have 38 courtrooms total. The building is just under 370,000 square feet total, 10 stories with a penthouse for mechanical. Basement of the building is planned for the central holding functions. Folks that are brought over from the jail are held in central holding and then distributed to the upper floors for court. Also in the lower level, we've got some building support functions, mechanical spaces, and so forth. On the first floor, this is kind of one of those spaces where everybody was jockeying for some position to get on the first floor. The biggest components are obviously our security queuing. That's been a major component of the design discussions throughout the entire process. One of the significant challenges of the current courthouse has been the ability to process people quickly through security and have adequate space for people to queue and wait to go through security and so forth. So that's been a big focus. That's this area right here. We're focusing a lot of area for security queuing and security screening. Also on the first floor, we're trying to accommodate most of our higher volume functions. So the traffic court on the first floor, that's a high volume courtroom. We have the circuit court's customer service functions. Oftentimes people will come in and just take care of business with the clerk and then leave, so we want that to be easy for folks coming and going from the building. And then jury commission, jury assembly. That's another area that right now is challenging, I'll say, in the current courthouse. So we're trying to make, these are people that are donating their time to be part of the jury, so we're trying to make that a little bit nicer space. The other thing we're looking at with that is because it's not utilized all the time for jurors, we're trying to make it multi-purpose so it can be used for additional meeting space and all those other things to get the best value out of every square foot of the building. The backside of the building along Washington has a lot of the service components, so that's where the sally port is for prisoner transport, loading docks, trash, all those other kind of things are oriented toward the south face of the building. And then we have a secured plaza at the front just to make a little bit nicer entry to the building for folks coming to the space. Second floor, again, we're looking at higher volume, higher used spaces. So to get the vertical throughput in the building, we have elevators, but we also have escalators. So we're using escalators to get to the second and third floor of the building to just move people more efficiently through the space. You don't have those bottlenecks in the first floor. Two higher volume courts here, a higher volume criminal misdemeanor court and a small claims court. Both have a lot of people in them every day. And then the balance of the clerk space is on the second floor. So there's a connection between the first floor customer service functions of the clerk and then what I'll call more of the back office functions of the clerk, all the minute clerks and all the supportive functions for that operation are on the second floor, so they've got a direct connection of their staff for efficiency. And then you start to see some of the supportive things, chambers and some court reporters and some of the other functions that make up kind of the back wing of the building there. As we get to the third floor, the main I'll call tower part of the building, the 10-story part of the building becomes a little bit more consistent in terms of the floor plan. We have 4 courts on this floor, and then this wing of the building, we have been referring to it as the agency wing. This tends to be much more office-oriented, so we have some satellite space for adult probation, law library space here, some satellite state's attorney space. I think a lot of you will recall that, we did in master planning look at all these options to consolidate every court function in the building, but it became a little too large of a building at that point. So what we have is still state's attorney, public defender, probation are still residing with their primary offices in other buildings, but what we accommodated is we'll call it kind of a staging or touchdown space for them, so that if they are done with court and they need to just pop back to an office, take care of a little business, rather than for the state's attorney, for example, walking across back to the EMCO building, they can take care of some business quickly without having to leave the building. One of the other major things in the design, right now, in the current courthouse, there's not a good separation between the public, private staff areas. That was made better in recent years. And then detention, or the secure detainee movement, custodies. That is difficult right now. That happens kind of through the back judges' corridors, which is not an ideal scenario. So what we've done is we have a primary public corridor that faces toward the north. It also has a lot of natural light, which you don't have in the current courthouse. That tends to make things a little less stressful and volatile environment. And the back here in the orange is really where the staff would be. That's a restricted access corridor, not to be used by the public. And then we have these red cores here, so in-custody defendants will come from central holding in the basement up through a dedicated secured elevator right into holding, come into the courtroom, take care of business, and then right back into holding. So right now what happens is you might have 10, 12 in-custodies brought into a courtroom sitting in a jury box. And that's just not a good idea. You don't want to have that many people sitting in a courtroom together. I think fortunately there hasn't been any major issues, but it's not a great scenario. So we're correcting that with this design. Okay, so moving up to the 4th floor, we have again 4 courts planned here. A lot of the back corridor functions are judges' chambers and other supportive functions, and then we have jury spaces on the wings here. The idea with moving them out to the wings is, again, we're trying to get the best use out of every square foot of the building. So if a jury's not in session, then those spaces can be flexed to be used for other types of meetings. We have a secured point here and then another one back here. So that you can bring public in there to do a different type of function. So those are all the details we've been working out with the judges and sheriff's officers and all that to work out the logistics on it. This court here is one of the specialty courts, criminal special proceedings court. So that's a larger court. That would be where you'd have some of your more significant trials and so forth, where you need more people, more counsel. So that courtroom is larger. The standard courtrooms are approximately 1,700 square feet. A lot of that is dictated by Illinois court standards and the accommodations that are needed in the well of the courtroom, the litigation area, and then providing a little bit more seating area so you don't have so many people waiting in the hallway for trials and cases. We also have a public defender, I mentioned their satellite office, and then the alternative dispute resolution, which is currently in the EMCO building, is moving over to this building as well. The 5th floor is where the agency wing in the building drops off. We have a vegetated green roof, and then a terrace that I'll talk about a little bit more later. We have a food service component here, not full-blown cafeteria, but kind of a lighter food service, high-end vending, maybe some sandwiches and that. Just recently, we had a good meeting with a proposed vendor who would operate that. So they feel very good about the potential there, so we're continuing to progress on that. One of the things we've done with that is instead of having large break rooms for every department in the building, we try to shrink those to accommodate more flexible space here where people can take a break, also as amenity for public and so forth as well. 6 and 7, we did a slight shift. Originally, we were looking at the project of having 24 courts as we planned it out initially in the initial build out, and going up to 34 courts, and that was staying consistent with a 4 court per floor. However, there was always a desire to try to maximize the number of courtrooms in the building and get the best efficiency out of it. So we did a lot of study with the judges and other participants, and we were able to accommodate on 6 and 7, 5 courts per floor. So within the same total square footage of the building, we're able to get additional courtrooms, 2 more at the initial build out, and then as many as 4 total additional courtrooms if you go down to Shelley Court. So these are a lot of family courts on the floor, and then we've created a little bit different court, like a bench trial court, which doesn't require as much space. And that's kind of one of the strategies we use to maximize the footprint. So 8, 9, these are the floors that right now are planned as shelled floors, so unfinished. We have a concept in terms of the planning and what types of courts would be there. Again, these would accommodate 5 courts per floor. We start getting into more of the civil courts in this case, in these floors. A lot of the other floors were focused a lot on criminal courts, which is displacing or replacing a lot of the stuff in the current courthouse. The 10th floor, we have one more special proceedings court, so this would be a civil special proceedings court, again, the higher volume court cases. The court administrative areas are up here on the 10th floor, and then we have a couple other sort of more specialty type courts, and then grand jury is also in this area. So grand jury is currently over at the EMCO building, will be moving to this building as well. And then penthouse is most of the mechanical systems and so forth for the building. So I'll just quickly go through a couple images. I think a lot of you have seen these before. This is just an aerial view of what we're looking at. It shows kind of the main tower section and the agency wing. We're calling this kind of the entry pavilion here. We're trying to pull security out from the base of the building to accommodate the extra square footage needed for the queuing and so forth. This is a ground level shot, kind of looking really from, I guess, the Pioneer Building, kitty corner across the street. You can see the EMCO building here and the existing courthouse over here. It's going to be a pretty significant building in the downtown. We're talking height-wise just under 200 feet in height. So, one of the objectives was to, make a positive statement for the downtown Joliet. We spent a lot of energy talking about materials for the building. I think some of you were part of a discussion we had a couple months back about the cladding here. We've opted to go with a limestone rain screen system. We're trying to tie back to some of the historical heritage of downtown Joliet with using the limestone. We want to have a lot of glass in there to try to make it a light and open and a little more comfortable environment for people to be in. And then again, a lot of glass. This is all office. People are going to be working in here all day long. We want to make sure it's a nice environment inside the building. This is just a little closer view of the entry pavilion. So main entry doors here, and then security queuing cabinets here, and security. I've got a couple of interior shots a little bit later here. Then I'll just kind of fly around the building. This is swinging around to the west a little bit, northwest corner. Shows a little bit more of the agency block. We're planning it as a LEED certified building, so a lot of attention was paid to how the building exterior skin needed to be designed to accommodate that. We're using vertical sun shading devices here on the east and west side. A lot of different strategies that we're taking into account for that. This is the southeast corner view, kind of shows where the Sally Port entry is and some of the back of house sort of functions there. And then this is predominantly where judges' chambers will be on the south face of the building. This is looking at the southwest corner. One of the things that some of you may recall, we had a goal early on to try to accommodate underground parking in the building. Very challenging. We needed to accommodate secure detention down there, but there's rock issues in downtown Joliet, and that was one of the things we had to step away from. So we're looking at doing judges parking directly south across the street in a secured lot, and then we're creating a judges entry here, trying to clean it up a little bit so they're not walking past all the back of house pieces. This gives you kind of just a little view where the building is elevated also above grade. Part of that was a strategy to avoid rock excavation and to provide a little bit more safety and security for the building, from anybody that might want to try to drive a car into it, for example. So we have stairs going up to a judge's back entry here. This is a view of the main entry entry, so this would be just after you pass through security, information desk, this gets you over to the elevators, and then all the court's customer service functions are back in this area. And you can see the escalators going up to second floor, and then another set that kind of runs up this way going up to the third floor. This is looking back at security. We've accommodated for 6 security screening stations, again, with the whole thought of trying to get people quickly through security so you don't have long lines outside the building. So this kind of shows up security, and then beyond that, on the other side is where people would queue up to wait to go through security outside of the building. This is a view of the main public corridor. I mentioned before about trying to have a lot of glass there. You know, if you've been in the courthouse right now, you know it's a little bit dungeon-like in the sense that you've got courts on both sides and there's no windows and just a little more challenging environment. So this opens it up a little bit, makes it a little bit more hospitable place. You can see entries to each of the courtrooms there. You know, we've been talking a lot about being incorporated, so we're looking at digital signage, things that just make it easier to continue to adapt as technology becomes more and more prevalent in the court system. So here's a couple views of courtrooms. This is a typical juried criminal court. We did a lot of work. Some of you may recall we did court bench mock-ups to really test out scenarios for the court bench. We had a lot of the court participants, their judges, clerks, everybody that would be part of the operation to refine that design. We're going to corner bench to be as efficient as we can with the size of the courtroom. Courtrooms are designed to accommodate for jury or non-jury, so that's something that I think jury trials have been a little less common lately, but that can change at any time. So there's good flexibility to where if years down the road there tends to be more jury trials, you can easily add a jury box to some of the rooms that don't have them and continue on without a major renovation to the space. So again, with this notion of flexibility. This is just a view looking back at the entry. You can see council tables and spectator seating there. This is one of the higher volume courtrooms, criminal high volume specialty court. This one's a center bench just because of the size and arrangement of the courtroom works a little bit better. We've got accommodations for more council tables if that's necessary. Again, if we kind of looking toward the back, more spectator seating. Oftentimes these are the ones where you have a lot of people there. We've talked about how to incorporate things like press feeds and all that kind of stuff that need to happen in some of these higher profile cases. This is the jury assembly area, with again the idea of, you know, on days where you're bringing a jury in, you have plenty of space to accommodate jurors in a little more comfortable environment. But then if you don't have a jury, these spaces can be converted to be used for additional meeting spaces. This is one of the primary areas, and then kind of around the corner to the back here, there's another area for jurors that is perfect for a switch over to a large meeting space or training space for folks in the building. This is a quick view of the dining area. Actually, just half of it, we've got seating here, and then on the other side, there's another zone for seating. Been some discussion about, you know, just again, whether you can provide some flexibility, maybe some use a little bit more for staff or for public. So I think that's open in terms of the final operations. But what we've been looking at is trying to, you know, this is where the agency wing drops off. So we're looking out onto the roof. So we're doing a vegetated roof, which helps from a sustainability standpoint. But also, you know, is an amenity, and that's one of the things that we've put in a outdoor terrace area to allow people a chance to just get outside and get a moment's fresh air throughout the day without having to go all the way back down for security and back and forth. That's one of the things that, as we looked at final budgeting, we're saying it doesn't really fit in the $195 million. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, but just kind of gives you a feel for the space. So this is just kind of a nighttime view of the building, I guess, here. So that's kind of the quick overview of the building. Did you have a question before
I did. You showed the stairway for the judges, the back entrance. What if you have a judge that can't use the stairs? Do we have an alternative?
Yes. So the view I showed was from the south side, where we have stairs. On the north side opposite, that's a ramp.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. We just the one view I had, I didn't
That's
get
okay.
both of them in. Yeah, and that's true in every case. So even that's a good point. The main entry here you saw, even for the public entry, is a lot of stairs. But we have an area here that's got a gradual ramping up to the building to accommodate anybody that, might have disability that needs to enter the building. So it's a fine balance between providing security separation. Stairs do a lot of good for that because it's harder to drive a vehicle up over stairs. We've done a lot of stuff with trying to make it, not look like Fort Knox, use a lot of landscape barriers and things like that. A couple cases, we do have to have some security bollards. We spent a lot of time working with the city on that because some of the work we're doing ends up being in the city's parkway there. They've been very good to work with in terms of fine-tuning a lot of those details. So I mentioned before that we, as Jim said this before, what can we accomplish within the initial budget target of $195 million? And the team as a whole, all the users have been fantastic. You always start out with all the wish list of items you want, but everybody's done a really good job of being practical, working hard to figure out, is this a want or a need? And we focused on the needs. We are trying to prioritize things that have a good life cycle benefit. So as we looked at areas where we were having some budget challenges, we tried to stay away from things like mechanical systems, because decisions on that make it hard to come back from. You'll pay a penalty long term if you shortchange your mechanical systems on the front end. But as we looked at everything we wanted, even with all that hard work, there were certain items that we said, well, if we need to get all the way back to budget.
Jason, maybe I can stop just for a second, so you'll understand the process you went through. After the first initial round, where you're including a lot what people would like to have in the building, the users, I think we did have a budget that was about 215.
Yeah.
So we were at 215. And the reason I'm mentioning this, so the team then had to say, we're $20 million over the target of 195 million. Now where can we start maybe trimming this down and talking to the users, see what they really need and what's absolutely necessary. So and the reason I'm mentioning this, so the team took $20 million out of that first round. So it was not easy. And so there will be a few items where they feel they really got into some things that shouldn't have been excluded. But I want everyone to know that they did cut they cut out 20 million of a project to get to 195 million target, which I think is important to mention.
Yeah, thanks.
You've been working pretty hard with this, and I've attended some of those meetings, and I can tell you they're tough conversations, both from the design and from the building and engineering perspective. So anyway, that's what I'm mentioning.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. That's a good point. I mean, I think some of you who have been tracking with us a little closer through Capital know that we really completed design development almost 2 months ago, and we've been spending a lot of energy over the last 2 months to make sure we're fine-tuning the design and scope to the budget. And, so it's been an extensive exercise, but a good one. And I think that we challenged each other to come up with more innovative solutions to things, to figure out how we can save money. But at the end of the day, even with all that work, there were 10 items that we identified and said, well, these are things we can do to get totally back to budget, but we feel these are items that start to compromise the integrity of the building a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of go through them quickly. I've got a couple images to show too. I'm not going to get into the weeds on every one of them unless there's questions, but I'll pick out a couple, like water softening system. That's something where the original design, we just didn't have a plan. We weren't planning for a water softening system, but as we got into it, we found how hard the Joliet water is and how challenging that was going to be to the long-term viability of some of the mechanical equipment and hot water heaters. So we put it on the table, but this is one that it's going to hurt if you take this one out of the project, because then you're going to end up having to replace equipment quicker. So if we can incorporate that, it pays for itself very quickly in the overall process. Another one that's similar to that is the elevator. Because we have 2 floors that are, in this scenario, planned to be shelled floors, we have 6 public elevators, but until those floors are built out, we really can get by with 5. So we looked at that and said, well, is this an opportunity to where, we have the shaft for the elevator, but we don't install that elevator day one. And that will save some money day one. But again, the challenge with it is when you go back to install it, down the road, whatever the timing is, you're likely to pay as much as 2 to 3 times the cost of whether you put it in now. So this is kind of why we're identifying some of these things and recommending that, if you can, it's in probably the best interest for the project to incorporate a lot of these functions back into the building. And we kind of did a total number here. It's just about $2.3 million of scope items. I'm going to just click through a couple slides here to show you some differences on some. And as Jim said, some of these are aesthetic. We kind of took out all the aesthetic things that we felt we could do in the first round of cutting. There's a couple on here that, I think really start to give you a totally different look for the building. So I'll try to give you a feel for those. One of the first ones on this list was kind of technical, but we've got columns in the building that are, in and adjacent to public spaces, and we made a decision to get the budget to go with squared off column enclosures, but you can see that you end up having to do these corner guards, or you get something like this, it starts looking a little bit more like a hospital than a courthouse. The other thing is they're right along the curved public corridors that take up a lot more space in this instance, so it kind of hinders the public circulation there. So one of the options is to go back to a round column enclosure. We've looked at things like stainless steel is a preferred in terms of durability, but what we're proposing is to go with GFRG, which is glass fiber reinforced gypsum. Still a durable product at lower cost, but this is one that we think is going to pay dividends in terms of maintenance long term. They won't get beat up the same way that a squared off one will, and makes it easier to move through the space. These also, there's 2 parts to this one. This also occurs in the office areas. We've really tightened the offices down as tight as we can. When you go to a square column enclosure, it even gets difficult to accommodate furniture in some of the spaces. So this one is that's why we're recommending going back to a round column enclosure. One of them has to do too with the plaza. We're proposing a precast concrete paver plaza as opposed to just a poured concrete plaza. This again, I think, is going to help with long-term durability. When you have a concrete plaza, I think I might have a couple images here. You can see even at your own courthouse what happens over time. It gets cracked, it gets beat up, you have to replace it, it doesn't look right. And these can also become, trip hazards and so forth if you do that. If you go with more of a precast paver on top of the concrete, it's much longer lasting. If there is one that gets cracked, it's a matter of just replacing one and not having to kind of re-pour a whole section of the plaza. So this is another item that we're recommending be included. The next has to do with, this is a little bit more of an aesthetic issue. You saw the images I had before. We have a wood ceiling, something that kind of livens up the space. One of the things, we're trying to be smart about where money is spent. The offices are just pretty simple, straightforward, plain offices, right? I mean, that's just more about getting the work done. There's a couple areas, though, where we're trying to make it a little bit richer building, make it a little bit more warm feel as you enter. So one of the options is to, go with just a plain painted gypsum ceiling. That was one of the things that we kind of had to do to get all the way back to budget, but you can see the difference between that and this. If you add a little bit of wood into the space to kind of make it a little richer, a little more warm and comforting environment, not so sterile. Where it really has an impact, though, that ceiling extends out, so you can see that it comes out in the overhang, and we have to get into more of an extra plaster system. So it just gives a very different look to the building here than in this image. So this is another one of the items we're proposing. Looking back, there's a piece about, we have an element here. So this, we call it a canopy, interior canopy over the security screening. Right now that's accommodating lighting for the security work that's being done, cameras, a lot of infrastructure. We've got digital signage that's part of that. But we looked at it and said, well, do we have to take that out of the budget, or out of the project? Can we budget? So it kind of gives you this look here, we lose that. We do have challenges with that in terms of how do we deal with the wayfinding signage. That's a big deal in terms of getting people in and oriented and knowing where to go. So there's another one we recommend adding back into the project, just to accommodate some of that infrastructure. I think I skipped over the flooring. We had a base system here of a tile floor. But one of the things we've talked a lot about is just in the main public lobby, which gets the most traffic, going to a terrazzo floor there. Anybody who's seen, I mean, even in this building, you know, with terrazzo, that can last forever if it's done well. Tile's a decent product. The only issue is you still have grout joints, and anybody in their home who's got tile knows that over time the grout joints can get dirty, hard to maintain, and so forth. So we're recommending moving to a terrazzo solution, which will have a better long-term durability. So I mentioned this before. This is that outdoor terrace. So this gives an opportunity for folks in the building to, from the fourth floor from the cafeteria, just to step out, get some fresh air without having to go all the way back down through security and then back up through security. So we're trying to tie this to the dining space. We met with this potential food service operator that would be in the building. They saw this as a benefit. I think that you know, the more you can make it a good space, it makes that food service operation more viable for people that are in the building. The objective is to not have a county-run food service operation. So the more you can keep people there buying product there, the better it is for the operator to be self-sustaining. So this also adds to that, in addition to just kind of giving a space for people to step outside without having to look for security. Another one is in the courtrooms. You know, we're trying to, I mentioned before that in the office areas, you know, it's a little bit simpler finished material, but we're trying to be respectful to the work that's done in the courtrooms, a little bit more dignified. So this is kind of a minor item, but we looked at options to just do more painted drywall, which just has a little bit more sterile look to it versus adding a little bit of wood into it. So not a big cost item, but something that I think just ties the overall design together a little bit better. It makes it a better finished product. There's just a couple more views of that and the differences. So that's kind of the bulk of the kind of smaller items that we've talked about, and items that we feel pretty strongly are going to provide, you know, good payback for you, and you know, make it an investment that the county's proud of overall. So that's those key items. Did you want me to jump into?
Why don't we jump right into excuse me, the full build out on
Sure.
time.
Okay.
And the fact that percentage is a lot more courtrooms too, by the way.
Correct.
But,
So I'll set the stage on that. I talked a lot about before that in the base concept, you know, we've only got the 26 courtrooms planned, but then if we, or 28 rather, if we build the extra 2 floors, we can take it up to 38 courtrooms. So same kind of concept where we're doing 5 courtrooms per floor. You know, as we project it out, we know that there's going to be a need for those courtrooms, maybe even sooner rather than later. So we spent a lot of energy as a team thinking about what some of the issues are around that, and how building that out now would be a lot easier from a logistical standpoint than doing it in the future. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Tom for a minute just to talk more from a construction aspect on some of the key considerations there.
Before you do that, could I ask a quick question, Jason?
Sure.
When you started out, the 2.3, almost 2.3 million seconds, all the things that you showed us with the wood touch, et cetera, is that all encompassed in that 2.3?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I just kind of bundled all 10 of those
Okay.
items together, for a total number of 2.3.
Okay, thank you.
What we want to talk about, and what Jim and Jason had been alluding to here with the build out of floors 8 and 9, currently in the base now, in the $195.5 million budget, we just have shelved those floors. We have not built them out. There's no courtroom space or anything else on there. It's just no toilet rooms, just unbuilt space. What we kind of wanted to talk a little about today was building those courtrooms out on floors 8 and 9 with the rest of the building during the construction of the project going forward, so that these are incorporated into the building now and not at a later date. We've got some bullet points up here as to why that makes sense, both financially, on the operations. It's much less disruptive to the courthouse operations to do this work now, rather than, say, have the project complete, courtrooms are occupied, court's in session, and then we're trying to build out floors 8 and 9 at that point in time. The cost, I think, is something that we've looked at. I think it might be on the next image, and we'll get to that in a second. But doing it during during the courtroom build out after the building's occupied, it's going to require the work to be done either on second shift and overtime on weekends, which is obviously much more expensive, and it's going to cost quite a bit more to do that then than it would now. We took a look at some of the other items too. All of the stocking of the floors, which you would normally do now during construction, you would do with a window leave out so that you can get drywall and other materials up onto the floors. Doing it later on after the building's occupied, you're going to have to do it with a freight elevator, which is much less efficient. You're not going to be able to put as much weight on that. It's going to require to do this in a much less efficient manner. And typically when we see tenant work done in buildings that have already been completed, the base bid, you put a premium in there for any dings and dents and things that you're going to have to the lobbyway, to the flooring, to the walls around the elevators. Obviously the elevators get pads and you can protect the inside walls fairly well, but there is a chance too that you're going to damage some of the existing finishes, floors, lobbies, lobby walls and things, doing it after the base building is done. We'll have to connect to existing MEP, fire protection systems, security systems, when we build out 8 and 9 at a later date. That could cause disruption, the cut-ins, the tie-ins. Some of the systems may be down during the tie-in parts of the construction, so that can also be disruptive to the entire building when we do this at a later date. It probably has to be done on weekends, cutovers and tie-ins, and that obviously just costs more money to doing it at that point in time too. There is some run of security, and I don't mean to say that it's construction guys or workers will be running amok in there, but there is a security risk when you do it later. I think with the entrance, the egress, the ingress, people coming in and out of the building, doing it on off hours if it's overnight, second shift, third shift, or on weekends, and that can pose a potential risk also to the building, to security. We understand that the building may be utilized in the future more than just the 5 days a week, so that's also something to consider too. The build out, doing it after the building's occupied, is also going to take more time from a scheduling standpoint, just because it's so much less efficient. You're going to be doing it, as we've said through the first 5 or 6 bullet points there, weekends, overtime, limited access, and the schedule will just extend out to do it that way, which means also more cost to do it after the building's occupied. And looking at the documents and talking with White, with Jason, about how we would capture the alternates on the bid documents might be difficult to do to get everything noted on the drawings that we need to have a complete and a quality build out. We looked at it too from the standpoint that if you've got many alternates, and that's what these would become in the bid document forms with the bidders responding, there can be somewhat unclarity. There can be issues with, what have they included in their bid, what the intent is versus what they show, versus what they include in the numbers. So that can also work against us and can impact the number of bidders that we have for certain bid packages, because the build out and the alternates will affect pretty much every trade that we've got working on the building. The numbers that I said we'd get to here, right now, our cost to build out one of the floors at 8 or 9 is $9.2 million. That includes FF&E, that's a total build-out. Looking at this going forward, and we kind of just took a 5-year time frame to build this out after the building was occupied. Looking at about 4% a year material labor escalation going forward for the next 5 years, we'll probably see about 1.8 million in escalation, additional cost for that labor material. You know, labor, the unions will continue to have their increases on May 31st, June 1, whatever, so the labor will continue to rise somewhat predictably, but you know, it's a given that that's what's going to happen. Material prices have been fairly unstable at this point in time. We look at differences in conduit, in pipe, and steel. Steel has gone up, gone down. It's kind of, you know, on the rise again. We're hoping that when we bid this out in September, we're going to be where we think we're going to be right now in the estimate. But the mechanical guys have been telling us, the contractors and especially suppliers for things like pipe, conduit, that's been fairly unpredictable, and those prices have been fluctuating fairly wildly lately. And then added cost, the penalty, that 15% you see there, the 1.3 million, almost 1.4, is what contractors will look at for the things we talked about on the previous slide for access, second shift work, inefficiencies, not able to get the production and so forth that they would get if they built it out with the rest of the building as you completed the rest of the floors. So we figure that the premium to do this, say 5 years down the road, might be about $3.2 million. So what is today about a $9.2 million build out for each floor could translate into somewhere around $12.5 million in the next 5 years if we waited that long to do that. So we just wanted to touch on that as we go forward. Jason and White are preparing the bid documents. They'll be issuing those to us at the end of August. They've hit all of their dates. We're looking at their 50% construction document set right now. And we anticipate trying to get everything together so that we're going to go out to bid in September. So this is one of these decisions that we wanted to get out there and get everybody thinking about and try and make that call heading into the final release of the bid documents at the end of August.
The only other thing I would mention, and I am going to ask the Chief Judge shortly to come down and make some comments before we take the question. By not building out those floors, we're not increasing the capacity of the courts. We're basically leaving the capacity where it is today. And the whole idea was to increase the capacity of the courts so we can get an appropriate amount of judges that are warranted from the population of both counties. So away from cost and the cost more later, we're not increasing the capacity. I think that's the other aspect you have to consider heavily. So I just want to throw that out. Tom, your presentation is completed at this point. I would ask the judge before we take questions to maybe make, if you'd like, maybe make some comments about where we're at this point on the courthouse. Would you like to come down, Judge, and say a few words?
I can come down there, or I can speak from here.
Come on down. Come on down. Let people see you. See, yeah, that's nice outside stuff. Come on.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for doing this. I can't express our gratitude from the judicial branch of government more than I can't tell you how much this has been needed and all of your help in getting this done. A couple of comments I would like to make. First, as to the request by White to potentially add back in some of those 10 items or all those 10 items. I would like to say this. Jason has known from day one that I've told him that I'm a functional reform guy. Make it work first, and then if it looks pretty later, then okay. But there are exceptions to every rule, I guess, and Jason has hit on most of these. Some of these items that he's talking about are function items. Of course, the elevator, the water softener system, but most of them has to do with the aesthetics of the courthouse. And what I had to say about that is, if you go through a town, if you drive through a town you've never been to before, I can guarantee you that you'll know instantly which building's the courthouse. And that's not by accident. It's important that people are in front of a judge, they know the importance of what they're doing, they know the formality of what they're doing, witnesses, defendants, petitioners, respondents, they know that they have to comply with court orders. We want to put them emotionally and mentally in a mental state where they understand all of this. And that doesn't start when they're in front of a judge. That doesn't start when they walk into the courtroom. That doesn't start in the public hallways. It starts when they approach the building. And you want the building to look like a courthouse, to set that emotional framework in their head. And I think a lot of what Jason is suggesting helps do that. And quite frankly, it is more difficult to make a 10-story building look like a courthouse than an old-time 2- or 3-story courthouse. And I think Jason and his people have done a great job in going this far and in making that happen. And I think that these extra steps that they would like to add back into the courthouse will be advantageous to the judiciary in accomplishing our job on behalf of the residents of this county. As to the issue of the build-up, the shelved floors, part of it's math. We have 36 judges now. We have a right to 2 more that we can't get because we don't have room for them based on the 2010 census. And by the projections for 2020, it's my expectation that we'll have a right to 2 or 3 more. So that'll be 4 or 5 judges that we'll have a right to in 2020. We have 36 judges right now. That will mean we'll have a right to 40 or 41 judges for our county. And that's based on population growth. We have a right to we have a right to a new associate judge for every 35,000 new population from one census to the next. That's by law, that's in the statute, for those of you who didn't know that. So that's where these projections come from, it's math. Going back to our courtrooms, we have, if we open this courthouse, the new courthouse with 28 courtrooms, we'll have 28 there, 6 in the EMCO building, 2 out at River Valley. That will give us 36 courtrooms. And we'll have 40 or 41 judges. The math just doesn't work. We have an example of, we have 2 floaters, we have 2 branch court judges. The branch court judges are out in the branch courts, and you know, most of you know about the branch courts. We have one in Peatone, Frankfort, Wilmington, Braidwood, Lockport, Bolingbrook, Plainfield. The branch court judges are out there in those branch courts maybe half the month. They come back in half the month. We have 2 floater judges that are there to do the work for, extra work for judges. Either they take over for vacations or they're there to serve my office if files come up that they need to handle when they don't have some other call. An example of this was yesterday. I have 2 floater judges. Both floater judges were in my conference room waiting. And it's not because we didn't have work to assign them. We had work, plenty of files that we could have addressed for the residents of our county. The problem was we didn't have a courtroom to put them in. And if we have these extra courtrooms that are built out now, again, I'm not talking from an economic or a financial standpoint. I'm just talking about from a judicial branch services point of view. We will have enough courtrooms to put all of these judges, and they can address files that are assigned to them, whether it be family, misdemeanor, felony, civil, any kind of case, they will be able to address. And I think that how we have the makeup of the courthouse done right now between jury rooms, non-jury rooms, the different divisions in the judiciary, I think there's going to be enough flexibility that we can keep these courtrooms busy And I do believe, and I know it has been mentioned, and maybe this is beyond where I should speak about this, but there has been discussion over the last few years about the possibility of satellite courthouses, certainly one up north and maybe one out east. If we build out these shell floors now, it will give the county board and the county executive an opportunity to consider other options as you move forward, because you won't need to progress so quickly into that decision-making process as we run short of courtrooms, because we should not then run short of courtrooms if we build out these shelled-out floors until at least 2030, maybe beyond. So it does give you more time to consider the aspect of satellite courthouses. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't know where else you wanted me to take
No,
this.
I think, I just wanted to get your, from the judiciary point of view, especially the capacity, I think, is, I'll mention two things. To me, that to build a new courthouse, spend all this money and not get to the capacity level that we need wouldn't be the prudent thing to do. I'd also like to point out that we've had a lot of cooperation, especially with revenue streams. And the courts also not only did go forward and get a fee for the building of a courthouse that's added to cases. You also gave up your parking lot money. Not all, not 100% of it, but the majority of it. So I do think the courts also put in, helped as much as they could on the financial side, which I think we should not dismiss. And certainly, I think part of the reason was so we could accomplish the capacity. You have a courthouse and we put a courthouse. So I want to throw that out there too. There was financial participation by the judiciary and continues to be. So it gives you a little, I think, a little more skin in the game, so to speak. We tend to think population-wise. Actually, I think Will County is fortunate that our crime rates are pretty low compared to some of our surrounding counties. Well, the one thing you can be assured of, we tend to think about the criminal side, but with population, we know the civil side demand will grow, whether it's lawsuits, whether it's divorces, custody cases. That grows considerably, and we tend not to get on it.
You can't avoid that as the population grows. That's why new judges are based on population growth.
So we can't avoid that part. And what I want to also point out, not everybody that walks in a courthouse in a courtroom is a criminal. They're regular citizens, and they're there for some other type of reason, civil reason. And here it comes up, well, you want those people to feel comfortable coming into the courthouse.
Yeah,
feeling they're walking into a jail or a sterile kind of environment. So
it's not only the litigants, but I've been apologizing to jurors now for the last 15 years because of the very poor way we treat them with the jury assembly room. And those are all citizens, those are all people who live in this county, vote in this county. We have at least 10,000 jurors coming every year. So, and it's the employees, it's everybody. You're right, Mr. Speaker.
I mean, you have more people, you have more non-criminal people going into the courthouse than criminals. We should keep that in mind. You know, it's easy to say, oh, well, who cares about the environment for a bunch of people who are breaking the law? But that's not the case. The majority of people who come into our courthouse are there on some type of non-criminal matter. And by the way, that includes traffic. Traffic is a fine. It's an ordinance, but they're not criminals, for example. I think we've all got caught speeding at least once, haven't we? So when I do, I just give up and get it close. That's what we're gonna say, it's fine. But anyway, I wanted to point out, you know, that it's average citizens that come to our courthouse. And for some, it's average citizens who are there to testify, maybe in a criminal matter. And thank God they're stepping up and are willing to do that, because many people are not. Those are the same folks who we want to make sure feel comfortable and safe coming into our courthouse. So I guess they kind of just summed up my thoughts. I'm going to open it up to any questions that anyone might have. Comments, questions, what you think we should do, whatever. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to put a financial spin on it first. When we talked about our $195 million building, we talked about bonding for $195 million to build this building. So I want to ask a rhetorical question. If we bond for $195 million, is everybody okay with building out 2 floors and adding all these things back in? Because we can do that. Because of our superior ratings, we had a premium when we bonded out. So for $195 million worth of bonding, we can do all of this, including the 2 floors. So it's a simple number. We got a premium when we bonded out. We add, so basically, our bond was $195 million to add 2 floors and to do all of the things that Jason talked about.
So Mike, let me just, so basically, we meet our, what you're saying is, we meet our budget goal of 195, and even though the building would go up to say 215, 216, 217,
Right.
the premium that the bidders put on the bond will pay for that.
So our cost in bonds is $195 million.
So somebody has an understanding that they're willing to pay us additional money to get our bonds as we need to be firm. So it does meet our goal of $195 million in a budget as far as bonding goes, and get a full build out, which I think is.
It's a goal.
I think it's, to me, I don't want to say to me, it's the thing to do, but this makes, I think, helps us then meet our original goal. But, any other comments? Denise?
For the 195, I said on the front end, I thought the 195 was a guide, not etched in stone, so I'm still in that place.
And you're right, by the way, it was a guide, this is to say, show us what we get for 120. You're right.
I'm still in that place. But I was curious about on the build out, if we build out 8 as courtrooms and 9 as offices, what's the impact for us? And my thought, just so that you know, if we, at 9 were offices, we could move some of our other people in there until the time we actually need those courtrooms.
Let me start out on that by just talking about from an operational standpoint. You know, one of the big drivers here too is to minimize the number of facilities that have courtrooms in them. The thought being there that when you look at buildings that, in terms of operations, the more buildings that have courtrooms in it, it's just that much more intensive to operate. And in terms of having all the security that needs to be there and the screening and all that kind of stuff. So I'd say if we did the master planning projections going out to 2040, 2050 and beyond, looking at what population growth is and all that, I think that as you look out long term, the county's going to need more courtrooms than just one shelf floor. So that's why we had this, because we've tested some scenarios about do we move like probation or some other office function into the building, for example. But I think that the way the building is designed, and it's designed really purposefully with the floor heights and all the other things that come into play and are required for courtrooms, it's probably best to reserve that space for courtrooms because you're going to need them long term. And otherwise you end up with a scenario where you're another building that has got to pick up that need down the road and adds a little bit more operational burden. So I'd say just from a planning and operational standpoint, it's probably better served to keep that reserved for courtroom space.
Okay. Beth?
It would probably be cheaper if you weren't doing 2 floors of courtrooms. I mean, theoretically, you would save quite a bit of the millwork. Maybe the AV cost wouldn't be as great either if you're just doing offices as opposed to courtrooms. So from that standpoint, at least, you know, to give you an honest answer on that, if you just did one in office, it would probably be the one with offices might be a bit cheaper.
So eventually,
What are we
we'd have to go
talking
back,
about?
eventually we'd have to go back to making courtrooms,
Yeah,
so.
it would go back to the courtroom eventually, but my thought is that if we didn't need that second floor as courtroom right away, we could then move some other people that we don't have space for in there to give us more time to plan out where we put them. Thank you.
Beth?
Mine is, I have 2 questions actually, but my first is a design question. On the floor where the family courts are located, I think it was 7. I recall that on capital improvements, we got the feedback that there's very unique needs to the family court. One of them being children that are in the middle of a custody battle or testifying, having to interact with everyone rather than having a private place. From what I saw, that wasn't part of every family court, but I didn't know if I took it in right. It was rather quick going through that floor. And what I'm really wondering is, did we meet the needs of the people who are in the family court and what they say they need? Or was that part of the cuts that were made in order to come in under budget? That's the...
Yeah,
If you pull up level 6, I think that answers maybe what your question was. Okay. All those conference rooms where it says family high volume, is that what you're referring to? Where the children can meet in those rooms?
yeah, quick answer to the question is, we were able to meet all the required program elements for the family courts. Even though we added the 5th court here, this is an all-family, this is intended to be slightly different, a criminal bench, but you can see the difference. I'll just go down one. On these, you've got 2 conferencing spaces outside of the courtroom. On the family floor, we've got 4. A lot of this is about providing separations of the different participants. We also have more specialty space over here, which would be like a family waiting. So all those program elements that we discussed in the planning have been addressed in the floor.
Okay, and that family waiting isn't specific to the one courthouse, it's a family waiting for the whole floor of people who are using that.
Right. I mean, what it is we're trying to provide a variety of spaces. Any one of these could be used for a waiting space as well, because they don't all need to be used for conferencing, but the idea is to provide enough separated spaces to keep, different parties separated, children, 2 spouses that are having a difficult time, just keeping people separated. So the idea is to provide a lot of flexible space to accommodate those functions on the floor.
Okay, that fully answers my question. I was just hoping we didn't cut from what they needed for their unique needs.
No changes to the needs there yet.
Directly?
I just want to plant the thought in anyone's mind who may agree with me. On number 8, I actually like the photo with the white ceilings better than the wood, and that would save us like $400,000. So I just want to put it out there in case anyone happens to agree. I also am not, I don't think number 3 is that big of a deal, down the road. Give somebody some union work to do, but I think that those are my only 2 that I have a reservation.
I think Mike kind of answered my question. I am fine with keeping these 2.28 million, whatever it is, 800,000 in the plan. And if we don't build out floors 8 and 9, I don't see the purpose of ever even building this courthouse. And if we're not adding courtrooms, there isn't a purpose. We're just spending $195 million to replace the building, and that's nice, but if we're not adding courtrooms, it doesn't make any sense.
We are adding courtrooms with the new building. We only have 31.
I didn't understand that from the way the judge spoke, but, maybe semantics somewhere along the line.
Sarah?
Jim, I think the chief judge wanted to address that.
Oh,
just
I don't think we're
issue of, again, it's from where I started the math at. It's, we have 23 courtrooms in the current courthouse right now. It's designed currently to open with 28. I'm not coming from that perspective. I'm coming from the perspective that I know how many judges we're going to be getting and needing and how many courtrooms compared to that. That's where I was coming from.
Right, no, I agree with you. If we aren't finishing out these 2 floors, or at least one of the 2 floors, we're not really adding any capacity.
If we don't add 2 floors, it appears that it has capacity for 5, but we already have judges to fill them.
Right.
Plus the
The point is it doesn't meet our need for courtrooms with the capacity that we currently should have for judges.
Correct.
So, okay.
Thanks for getting back to me on that. This is a big project, and I keep going back and forth with, I understand the needs of adding floors 8 and 9. Denise kind of struck on something that caused me to think a little bit about it, and along with the judge's statements about satellite offices. We're talking about 28 courtrooms right now. If we built out floor 8 with courts, as she suggested, we'd be at 33. We put offices on 9. Where do satellite offices come into this discussion? And what's the cost to build a satellite office? Because I agree that we need more courtrooms, and I'm in agreement that, yes, we could go to 33 without any convincing. I'm just not sure that we need to go to 38 in one building without convincing. Because I think that part of what we have to keep in mind is the user. And I'm not sure we want every person in the entire county having to drive to Joliet in order to go to court. So I start thinking about the satellites. It'd be nice to have one way east or one way north to limit that travel time, having to come into Joliet. So I don't think that we need all of the courtrooms in one building.
I think that, and we did have a brief discussion on this some time back, Eric, and it was about the need and the functionality of the courts versus convenience to the public. And satellite courts, at this point in time, don't necessarily add to the capacity to what we need in the judicial system. And the cost of operating satellite courts from an operational standpoint can be considerable. And it's more of a convenience than a need for the functionality of the judicial system. That's why I think we chose to, at this point, say, well, we're going to focus more on the capacity and the functionality of the judicial system. Later down the road, those satellite courts won't just be for convenience, it would be more because of the need. So you really wait till there's the need versus the convenience. Certainly with the day-to-day type of thing that most of the public deals with, which is basically traffic and ordinance violations. The judiciary is accommodating that with what I call road courts, whether, and there's, I think the judge went through them. I know there's one in Frankfurt. It serves part of the Lennox area, the Mokina, the Frankfurt. They tend to come there for all those volume types. So I do think that we are meeting that kind of convenience need for the majority. Those courts are not set up to listen to felonies or past X misdemeanors. They're certainly not set up for juries. So I think the way we're approaching it now is probably the prudent way of doing it. So
Can I just make a follow-up statement?
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate you doing that. I know that I just wanted to thank Jason for actually the presentation that he put on today, because it really gave me a good visual of what the difference is for $2 million. when you look at it in the scope of roughly $195 million project. You know, when I initially walked in today, my initial thought is, you know, we don't really need to spend any more money. We're already at $195 million. I want to hold it down. Maybe I can go for the water softener, maybe I can go for the flooring. But, you know, it's just a vast difference when you look at for the $2 million, you know, we're spending $200 million. The people of this community are going to walk into this building and go, just for $2 million, and you look at, well, wow, this looks really nice. Or, wow, this is what we got for $200 million. It really is that difference, I think, visual effects. And so, you know, I would say that, you know, I would be in favor of the additional $2 million that we're spending.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're going to get to you too, for some.
I want to thank Jason and the team for all the things and for all the work that they put into this. This has been a long time project to look at a process that's dealing with our third branch of government, and a third branch of government that actually has more citizen traffic than any one of the other groups at this point. There's no other one of our departments that has as many citizens walking into their buildings on a daily basis. So I'm supporting the making sure that we do this thing right the first time. The building that currently holds our judges and courts was a little short-sighted on the growth, but I don't know that that was their fault. I mean, who would have predicted the blowing up of this county that took place in the 90s and early 2000s? And now we can't go in and build a building without thinking that those kind of things are going to happen in the future. So the support, I think it's important that we make sure that the capacity is there, but also that the quality, I mean, you can build a building, and everybody's been in those houses where the quality is a little less than the house next door, and you can not only tell the difference, you can see at the point 3 years from now, 5 years from now, where things are falling apart. And you have to spend more money in order to be able to make it look good again. And so I think we're better off making sure that we get this stuff done right the first time than to go back and backtrack later on and wish we had done something that we didn't.
Jason, you and Tom, I think, did a very good job convincing most of us in this room that building out 8 and 9 makes sense right now. Obviously, it's least expensive to do it now than 5 or 10 years later, and you've proven that point. But I think that just listening to what Finance Chairman Mike Frizzalone said, I think I just need a little more clarification in that we bonded for $195 million, $175. We're at $195, an additional 2 floors, we're looking at between $18 and $19 million. And I also agree that adding the little wooden touches, et cetera, for the 2.3, I think that makes sense too. I think it really adds a nice touch to the courthouse. And with that kind of investment, you know, if I was going to buy a $50,000 car, you better throw in the sun. So I think that extra touch, I mean, it makes sense to me. But I think what I needed to understand a little better, Mike, from you, is the additional bonding. We've already bonded for $175 million, but now we're over $200 million.
If I can explain that. So when you go to bond out, and we went for $175 million, if your average risk, people will pay $175 million for your bond, you get $175 million, and then you have to pay back $175 million. But when your risk is really good, they want to give you more money to get those bonds. So when we bonded out for $175 million, we actually got $205 million for our $175. So we now have $205 million, but our bonds are only for $175. So if we bond for $20 more million, and say we get no premium this time, we just get $20 million, we will have bonded for $195 million, but we'll have $225 million of cash. And since this will take us only to about 218, all in, both floors, what's the number?
Yeah, 217.
217, for $195 million of bonding, we can pay for the 2 floors and all of the other things that you said.
It's kind of like when you list a house, and you list the house for $300,000, but there's such demand for the house, they bid the house up to $375, right? So it goes beyond the asking price.
Right.
We got more than we were asking. Right. So, you know, I have Suzanne. Did you have any comments?
No, I asked my questions before
Okay.
I sat down, so I was definitely okay. But I just wanted to say, I agree with Gretchen on the wood panel seal. That's it.
So here's, and I'm gonna listen to Molly, kind of sum it up. There's no more questions. I just want to, I'll talk about process. One of the reasons I want to, first and foremost, I want to make sure that the entire board was brought up to speed on this project. Secondly, I wanted to hear your input, or the Capital Improvements Committee wanted to hear the input from the entire board on what they're thinking. So now I'll go back to the Capital Improvements Committee. And by the way, Denise, I think you should, at that meeting, bring up your suggestion of something we should take a look at, maybe building out one floor for other needs and one for courts. I don't know how that overall affects the programming, because the programming's been done. So there may be some other issues with that. That's what I have to say. So this also gives you additional time to think about some questions you might have, or some concerns you might have. So the Capital Committee will be making the will be working on what they're going to recommend to the full board going forward. So you'll have another opportunity to have input. If you want to have some written questions, you can call the chairman of Capital. If you can't make it, express any thoughts or concerns. So, so at this point, Ray, I don't know if you want to say anything.
I'll just say a couple things. Thank you. First of all, I want to obviously thank White and Gilbane for all their hard work. Love Dave, Pat, and Reagan. All of us have really put in a lot of time. And Farnsworth. One of the things we were charged with right from the beginning was to make sure that we tried to keep this project in budget. And we felt we did a really good job delivering to what, $195.5 million brought with the rain screen, the project. One of the things we did not want to do is we didn't want to cut any functionality out of that $195 million. We wanted to make sure we delivered a functional building to the chief judge and all the judges. So with that being said, I felt it was very important that we talked to everybody as a whole, and so did Jim. We brought it forward. You've seen the options that we have before us. We're in a very unique period of time when we decided last year to go out for a major bonding loan for the whole 175. At that time, there was extremely favorable market. Like we explained, we got an additional $30 million, almost of free money. It's $30 million that you could have towards building in functionality for the future. My personal belief is that we go down, we accept these 8 changes, and we build the 2 floors all at the same time. I'll look forward to talking to Ms. Winfrey further about her idea. I think there's going to be some design changes because basically from the design programming, we were basically copy-paste a couple of the floors. Now, obviously, there may be some challenges, and I'll talk with Jason further about that. But if any of you have any questions or anything that you'd like to submit to me, I will absolutely carry them to the committee, and we'll discuss them there. And I think we'll come back probably for a full vote, right?
Oh, yeah, we'll bring it back to the full board on the recommendation of the
Capital.
Capital committee. They'll come back in resolution form. It'll be more a yes or no by the full board. That's why it's important if you have additional, you'd like to have some additional input to get it to the capital committee. That'll be the first, their first meeting I guess it'll be the first, no, it'll be the first Tuesday in June, as we discussed. Not at the next meeting, which is next. If we wouldn't get it to the full board, just want that. So that gives everybody additional time, nobody feels rushed. At this point, is there any comments by the public? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to leave the hall. Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Executive